Alright everyone, here we are looking at our workbook page 122. This is a series of questions that's level 2 on the topic on average. Okay, previously in the previous video we looked at how the level 2 questions are like. We are one level above the ones that we have handled so far. So far in this chapter on average, we understood that there are three main identities: total, average, and number of data. This triangle relationship, as you can see here, I've written it down a few times and talked about it a few times, and we talked about how actually once you're able to recognize this triangle, understand the information that goes into this triangle, being able to identify what's missing in the question, what you need to find in the question, you'll most likely be able to answer all the questions that's related to average, the topic on average. Now, in the previous video, we talked about the two ways of solving missing number, in other words, missing information in a set of data question types. One is using finding the total first. Okay, then you subtract what's given to find the missing identity. The other one we talked about in green is about evening out or sharing the difference. Okay, we're going to look at the next few questions on page 122. We're going to do it the same way, two methods. One, step by step, sequentially finding total first, and the other one we talk about evening out. All right, my advice to you is try to understand both. Eventually, in an exam situation, you gotta have to choose what you think you are more confident of handling. Okay. Okay. Now let's take a look at this question. So over here, page 122. Okay, complete the table. Show you're working in the space provided. Now this is extremely important. We have talked about this multiple times, how working out and showing your workings can get you marks. Okay. Now, okay, so here we are, and let me write down the identities in the format of a number bond like this. So I have average and I have number of data. So previously I've color coded them in pink, okay, and blue and yellow. Okay, and over here you can see very quickly I'm able to identify what's the information that's provided in the question here. So I have average given. Okay, then I have here on saying rounds, and then they have the subject. So in pink, that's the number of data. So in this case, you have rounds, 3 rounds, and number of netball goals scored for each round. And here we are, we have a missing identity here. Okay, with this, we are going to work through the two ways. The first one is finding total first. So I have the average is given, that's 64. I have the number of data, that's 3 rounds. Okay, and I don't have the total, and that's the one that we need to find to help us to get to the missing number over there, the missing identity there. So I could use total is average multiplied by the number of data. So in this case, I'm looking at 64 goals as an average times 3 rounds. Okay, that makes a total of 192 possible goals. So 192 goals for all round 1, 2, and 3. Now, looking at this, if I were to do, okay, let's say round 1 and round 2 together, that gives me 70 plus 62, which is 132. So to find round 3, I take the total, and then I minus what's here. Okay, so that's round 1 and 2. So I will be able to get 192 minus 132. That will give me the answer for round 3, 60. Okay, so that's the first method in blue. I'm going to use the same method to solve the next question. Okay, and we talk about the evening of the goals or evening the marks or sharing out the difference a bit later. Okay, but I hope you will persist on to hear about the other method after this. Okay, all right, so over here the same thing as the question A. I have the total, I have the average, and I have the number of data. So here we talk about using writing in the symbols as well. Okay, so over here, okay, the average is given. The average is 90. The total is what we don't have. We have the number of data. There are 4 subjects here, so that gives you 4 data. So I have one that's missing. That's the mother tongue. So the scores for mother tongue is missing. So to find this, first of all, I can find the total. So the total will be, the average marks is 90 times the 4 subjects. So after I add them up and then divide out, the average is 90. So to find the total, I times them together again. I get the total would be 360 marks. So in other words, to get to mother tongue, the marks for mother tongue, I use the total and I subtract English, subtract mathematics, and subtract science. Okay, in other words, I could use a bracket and I add up the 3 other subjects first. And that gives me, which you see, because of the numbers being a bit huge here, my addition sums are going to be a little longer and tedious. So I have 78, 15, and then over here 23, and then I have 11 and 15, that's 26. Okay, so English, Maths, and Science add up together to give me 226 marks. And I subtract it, they'll give me my answer for mother tongue. Okay, so that's the first method. That is looking at what I have, what information I have, and then see how I can use the information to solve the problem. In this case, there's an extra step of getting to the missing information in a set of data. Okay, now let's move on to talk a little bit about evening out the goals, another way to understand average, and how actually sometimes that method can be faster. Okay, at this point, I will show you the PowerPoint slide. Okay, a quick look. So previously we discussed about, okay, there's more than one way to understand average, and we talk about evening out. So looking at these scores here, to even them out to find their average, actually I just need to get pupil C to give 2 marks to pupil B, and then now they are even. So likewise, in these 2 plates of muffins, I just got one to go over, they are now even. So the average number of the muffins is 3. It's the same as I say, if I'm going to add them up, which is, which is like 6, then 2 plus 4 is 6, and then I divide them into 2 plates, that gives you the same answer, 3. So the same as 48 plus 52, and then I divide it again. So that is the same idea. So this is another example. So I have 2 scores, people A and people B, they are already average score, and I given out and share out, everybody's going to be average. So likewise in the muffins here, there's some giving out to do, and then they become even. Now back to the worksheet question. How, using another method, okay, this can be easily solved, but yeah, it needs a little bit challenge in being able to visualize these numbers. So now let's say, for example, let me use green, and I'm going to draw it on the right side. Take a good look. Let's say I have this average here. Okay, I'm going to draw it here. This is the average, okay? All right. This average, this mark here is 64 goals, okay? So that's where the average lies. Now what happens is this. I have round 1 being 70. So looking at this, okay, this round 1 has, oops, here, round 1 is 70. Okay, this is the average. Okay, meaning he has got an extra of 6. Okay, this is extra 6 to get 70, right? So it's round 1. Round, that's data, and then 1. Round 1, he's 70. He has an extra of 6 because 64 plus 6 is 70. So he has got extra 6. Okay, and looking at round 2, round 2, round 2 is short. Round 2 is short of 2. It needs 2. Okay, it needs 2 to get to average that 64. So if I'm going to say, let's look at 1, and I chop off the 2, let me use a different color, use red. Okay, now here, this is the extra bit that, okay, round 1 has, and I'm going to take up 2 and give it to round 2 to top up what's missing. Okay, so now can you see rounds 262 plus the 2 he's now going to be even. Okay, now let's look at 3 then. So if I look at round 1, the average is 64. He's got 70. What is this here? You'll notice that, okay, this is the 4. Okay, so I'm marking it out in green. So say if I give this extra to C, to round 3, sorry, to round 3, he's going to be even at 64 too. In other words, he took 4 from round 1. Can you see that? So that makes here over here 4. In other words, round 3 needed this 4 to get to the average of 64. So in other words, round 3 will just be 64 minus 4. Okay, there you go. So just one step, you get to the answer. So the idea is, I look at what's extra over there. Round 1 has an extra of 6 from the average. He tries to give them out. Give 2 to round 2, round 2 becomes 64. And then give the extra 4 to round 3, and then here you go. Round 3 is now 60. Now to 64 as well. So looking backwards, you can see that this is round 3. This here is going to be 60. Okay, now I hope you are getting some sense of how this works. Let's look at the other example. So you see that I'm not having to go to long multiplication and then subtraction, addition. I'm looking at sharing out the difference. Now, so in this next question, we have the 4 subjects here: English, Maths, Science, and Mother Tongue. And then the average score is 90. So likewise, if I'm going to draw in the average here, so let's say this is the average mark, that's average, that's 90. Now, another way to think about sharing the difference is like, imagine it's like sitting on the seesaw and you want it to be balanced. You're balancing the extra and need. So like for example, the previous question, right? You know, you have an extra 6, somebody needs 2. So to balance out, actually you'll realize that round 3 needs 4, so that the extra and the needs can be balanced out. Okay, like a seesaw. So let's take a look at this question, maybe even clearer. So looking at this, right, I have English, Maths, science and mother tongue, looking at the marks, right, I can see that, okay, English has an extra of 7. Then maths needs 2. So we are talking about getting to the average, okay? And then science here, science also needs 12. So in this case, right, if you are going to think about it, let's say I am balancing the extra and then the need, okay? And then you see that, okay, the needs is more than what the extra can provide now to balance up. So, okay, in other words, if I draw the model here, let's have English. English has got extra 7, okay? Maths is short of 2, short of 2, short of 2. And then for science is even shorter. Science is short of 12. So in other words, if I look at the extra here, 7 is not enough to fill up that gap here. So means mother tongue here needs to provide extra 2 to balance out the need. So in other words, I have a need total of, say, 14. Totally, it needs 14. So they are short. Okay, if I give out this extra here, even if I give out 2 here, and I give this 2 to match, right? Even if I give it out and then help match here, oops, still not enough to help science because there's still quite a bit missing out. So in other words, to balance out what the need, mother tongue will have an extra of 7 too, right? Okay, so if you look at this again, if I'm going to draw in mother tongue, it also has an extra of 7. Okay, you realize, okay, maths extra 7 and mother tongue extra 7, that gives a total of 14. It can help to fill in the gaps of maths and science. Maths needing 2 and science needing 12. So that balances up. So in other words, my last bit here, mother tongue, will just be, okay, it actually got 90 and extra of 7, 97 marks. Now, in this case, if I'm going to use this method and do my subtraction, I should be expecting the same answer. Which, true enough, it is. Okay, so hopefully now you see this a bit better. I'm balancing, okay, the difference and sharing out so that they all become average.